All right, guys, so there's some interesting movement when it comes to various different things in the gaming industry, starting off with the Nintendo Switch 2 and potential happenings there. What's going on in Japan and some of the big RPGs when it comes to sales numbers, in addition to console sales as well, plus a lot more. So we do have a beefy Nintendo Switch and RPG news to go over. But before we get into any of that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and first start off with the Japanese Famitsu sales and kind of broadening off into a bigger topic. Sega, Atlas, they have been on a roll lately. We saw that Persona 3 Reload sold 1 million units already. The game just launched already at 1 million plus units across Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, but when it comes down to it, it's pretty much PC and mostly PlayStation when it comes to those sales. So that's very good. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, that game over 1 million units as well. Fastest sales in the series for both of them because now they have a multi-platform strategy. So that's definitely good to see. But now we're kind of honing in and looking at the Japanese sales and how does that have an effect as essentially a de facto exclusive in Japan, because Xbox is not really a factor and these games are not on the Nintendo Switch, and PC, while it's a factor, it's not a factor in the Japanese sales per se overall. That's tracked from Famitsu. So let's go ahead and take a look at it because I found this to be interesting because you would expect with Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, in addition to Persona 3 Reload and Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, that the PlayStation 5 would get a huge bump in sales overall. And we did see the past couple weeks, I think PS5 was a couple thousand units over the Nintendo Switch, and really old system at this point, which I'm going to get to my main point when it comes to all this, with Japan waiting, or at least hoping and waiting for the Nintendo Switch 2 based off of some of the numbers here. But if you look at it, it definitely seems to be that way. And I've had some discussions on people online about this because Persona 3 Reload had a good launch in Japan. We saw 76,368 units on the PlayStation 5, another 40,024 units on the PlayStation 4. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink from Psy Games, 48,000 units plus as well. We know that Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth also did really good when it launched previously, and it's still in the top sales as well. 30,000 units plus across the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 version. So with all of these games up there, when it comes to PlayStation in the top 10, this is the most that I've seen from PlayStation in the top 10 in Japan. I would have guessed that maybe we saw 60, 70, or 80,000 units sold with the PS5 hardware getting a bump up, but that was not the case. If you look overall at the sales of the PS5, despite all of these new titles launching, was actually below the Nintendo Switch, which all it had was the JJK game, The Cursed Clash, and that game's terrible for the most part. That game has so many refunds on Steam. I think like 100,000 refunds on Steam and all that. So, and people aren't really liking that. That sold about 25,000 units plus on the Nintendo Switch. The PlayStation 5 version, I think, sold like 4,000 units or something like that. But overall, definitely not necessarily great for that. But the Nintendo Switch actually sold more. It sold nearly 42,000 units for the past week in Japan, beating out the PS5, despite not getting all of these system seller, quote unquote, like RPGs that we've seen in the past, at least for Like a Dragon or like Grand Blue, not really a system seller, but a big franchise, and Persona 3. Obviously, Persona's big in Japan. So it was very interesting to see that. And that's what made me kind of think, okay, it seems like people are kind of waiting for that next Nintendo Switch in Japan based off of this right here, because Persona 3 Reload, Grand Blue Fantasy, you've got Like a Dragon, you've got all these big RPGs that people love that usually would boost sales for like a PS Vita in Japan, or like a PlayStation 3 or a PS4, or obviously Nintendo Switch throughout this whole time, or a DS or systems before. They're not really boosting the system sales of the system that it comes out to. We've seen this a few different times. It actually started with the PlayStation 4. We saw big games come out, and yeah, there'd be some boosted sales and it would look good, but it's gotten significantly less now, to where even when you see big games like this come out, like Persona 3 Reload, you're not seeing the PS5 actually jump up above 100,000 units in sales very often, pretty much almost never. And I would have expected, if there was any month, for it to be at least in the close to, let's just say, 70,000 units plus. It would be this past week. Now we still have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that's coming out, which I think could maybe boost things a bit more, but so far, at least from what I've seen, it looks like pre-orders are a bit weak on that game compared to Final Fantasy VII Remake in Japan. Now, in the US, all of that, Europe, it's completely different. Obviously, the games are going to do really well, but I found this to be very interesting that even with all these games, it couldn't outsell the old Nintendo Switch at this point, which is pretty much on its way out. And I think Japan is absolutely waiting for that next Nintendo Switch. They hear all the rumors like we do, and I think that when that system comes out, and now we have another rumor that we're going to get into some stuff to where it does seem like people are just kind of waiting to be able to play some of these games, not all of them, but some of them, and to get excited and buy when it comes to a new console, because this is kind of crazy to see this. I've never really seen anything like this, to where you have, huge RPGs like this coming out back to back to back, and the system can't pull above 50,000 units. I mean, the PS5 only did 34,484 units for the past week with all of these big RPGs coming out. So that's definitely interesting to see. Now, we got another rumor kind of expanding upon what we talked about before with Metaphor ReFantazio and Persona 3 Reload. We've got some rumors coming that pretty much a lot of Sega's big games are going to be coming over to the Nintendo Switch 2, along with a lot of other Japanese developers. This is a very well-noted leaker, which he's gotten so much stuff right in the past. He got the Persona stuff right when it comes to Persona 5 Royal coming to a multi-platform strategy and everything with Xbox and the Nintendo Switch. So he's also stating that a lot of Sega's library and catalog, my man Stealth talked about it as well on Twitter, will be coming over to Nintendo Switch 2. And I think that it makes sense because obviously with the Nintendo Switch, developers in Japan, nobody was really convinced. Koei Tecmo, Capcom a little bit, they had some stuff, but nobody was really convinced that this Nintendo Switch platform was going to be super successful. Heck, even the Pokemon Company president, he didn't think that the Nintendo Switch was going to be anything successful. A lot of people counted it out, but it ended up selling incredibly well and basically taking the world by storm. Now Nintendo sold 140 million units plus of these systems. So I do think that things will change when it comes to the perception in terms of what they want to do. Because remember, a lot of companies lost out on millions of dollars. The companies that were there in the Nintendo Switch launch, a lot of those third-party games sold extremely well. So a lot of these other companies just essentially missed out on that revenue. So I do think that Japanese support at the bare minimum will be good, whereas Western support, we'll see with that. But Japanese support, I fully expect Sega to have multiple different games announced for the Nintendo Switch 2 based off of some of the leaks from credible people out there, and based off the fact that the Nintendo Switch has essentially taken over Japan, to where even when you get big releases like Persona 3 and Grand Blue Fantasy and Like a Dragon, it's still not enough to really outsell the Nintendo Switch thoroughly or get up into the 100,000 units in sales or 70 or 80,000 units. The Nintendo Switch can still hold its own with older games, with legacy games and all of that. So that's why I think a lot of these developers are going to be on board, because the total shift from when the Nintendo Switch first came out compared to the Nintendo Switch 2 and what was charting and all of that is completely different. Back then with the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS, yes, 3DS was great, but you still saw a lot of PlayStation 4 and PlayStation Vita and games like that back in the top 20, top 30 charts. But now at this point, it's pretty much dominated by Nintendo Switch software, whereas PlayStation software kind of drops down. So I do think that that shift over the last number of years is going to be the big reason why we see more support from Japanese developers at the launch of the next Nintendo system. Now, PlayStation's still going to get its support. These games are still doing great when it comes down to the software sales, but when it comes to hardware and you're seeing these new software come out and the hardware is not pushing over at least 50K, that definitely shows that the market may be waiting for something else when it comes down to it, especially when the Nintendo Switch is the best selling system of all time in Japan. So I think people have that mind share waiting for that next system. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But I do want to get into the next thing here when it comes to a big RPG, talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So one thing that I noticed when I played the game, and you guys are seeing my gameplay footage, is that in the performance mode, it looked a little bit soft overall with the visuals. Now, I'm used to visuals being a bit soft. I played the Nintendo Switch. Obviously, that's not going to get the best visuals overall and everything. And obviously, if you're a console player, you're used to not having the highest end resolution and graphics and texture quality. But it definitely looked a bit off, because I played Final Fantasy VII Remake on my PlayStation 5. I played it on my PlayStation 4, and immediately the game jumped out. Even on a PS4 or PS4 Pro, I played mine on my PS4 Pro, when that came out back in 2020, it looked sharp, it looked clean, it looked detailed. But when I first booted up Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the demo, I booted that up and I'm like, oh, what's going on here? And even with the demo of Final Fantasy VII Remake, that looked better as well. And yes, it's not complete, it's not finished, maybe there's a patch, whatever the case is, but this one looked really soft overall. The textures didn't look great. I thought it was my monitor at first, but I actually saw a thread over on Twitter where Maximilian Dude was talking about this, and he talked about the graphics, and he said this at first. He said, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo graphics stock looks like performance graphics mode are both dynamic res. Boss fight in performance mode looks fantastic since it's not rendering a huge environment. Might go 1080p 60 frames per second with 4K Gamer Pro to upscale. So Digital Foundry did talk about it a bit more. I don't have Dark One in terms of John Lindman, his thoughts on that completely. I don't have it. If I find it, I can get it. But essentially, I'm going to just paraphrase. He said that it looks like it's at 1440p, but it's like upscaled or something like that. So there's definitely some weird things going, but he agreed overall with Maximilian Dude's analysis. So I didn't want to say anything until I knew something was kind of happening, because people will paint me as some type of Final Fantasy hater, or I'm just trying to say that the game sucks, or I'm upset that it's not on Switch, or I'm Nintendo's shilling for something, some type of stupid stuff that people do on Twitter all the time, right? When you just simply have just an opinion or something to say. So I wanted to wait a little bit, so it's not just me, right? There's other people that are also talking about this. So I find it very interesting. So we'll see how it actually shakes out with the full game. Now, when it comes to the gameplay is great. The performance mode, it delivers on a nice, or at least somewhat stable 60 frames per second, and the boss battles look good overall because they're not rendering a bunch of other stuff as well. So I do agree with what Maximilian Dude has to say here, but overall, I thought that the demo was fun. It was a fun game to play. I think that the gameplay is going to be great. It's cool playing as Sephiroth. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game overall, and I'm just excited for the game. But yeah, we'll see what they do with that, because I don't want to do all this, like, 4K Gamer Pro retro tink or whatever, all this stuff. I don't want to have to hook up everything to something else in order to get that type of image on the PlayStation 5. I mean, I think this is one of the things, it's like, man, if only there was a PC version of this as well, because there's going to be a PC version, but they have their deal. Obviously, Sony needs to do what they need to do, and the development resources, blah, blah, blah. Like, we know why, but it's going to be interesting. I still have the game pre-ordered. I'm still buying it day one. It's still going to be a very fun game, but it's going to be interesting to see how the final product turns out as well, because like some people noted, and like I saw, it seemed like the game was a little bit less sharp than Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PlayStation 4, even like a base PS4. It seemed like it was a little bit worse graphically than that game, which is something that you probably don't want to see, right? Because you have the PS5, but we'll see overall. I think that the gameplay still is going to shine all the way through, in my opinion. Now, let's get into something else here, more about the Nintendo Switch 2, because people are talking about it, and I do want to get into something that I personally feel, and I will have a separate video going into this in depth, but I think it's pretty much the writing's on the wall at this point based off of some of the stuff that's happened. But Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa talked about generational transitions, because I've seen multiple people tell me, oh, well, remember the Wii U? It's like, remember the Alamo, remember the Wii U? They flop there. Anytime that they have a system and the next system comes out, it's not successful. It's like this, I would say like folk tale, like, oh, Nintendo can't do a next transition. It's not about what they're doing right now. It's about, oh, it happened before, so therefore this is going to just be all messed up. There's nothing they can do to avoid that. And it's just like, okay, whatever, right? It's a completely different people, a completely different system and all that. But at the same time, as a company, I've worked at corp before, a big corp. And as a company, you've got to be aware of your past mistakes, and you've got to make sure that you do not follow those same past mistakes. Now, remember, you have different people, you have a different focus, you have a different R&D, you have so many different things from what caused issues before, but you still have to be cognizant of those. But at the end of the day, if you look at it overall, the most important things is game, or most important thing is games. That's the most important thing, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Games are going to be the most important, but how you handle the marketing of said games, the marketing of said console is also important. So Shuntaro Furukawa spoke about this at a Q&A session to shareholders, and he said that, quote, "We approach our business every day with a profound sense of urgency." Then he also said that the generational transition of platforms in the dedicated gaming console business is never easy. We have experienced significant challenges following successful platforms multiple times, so we never consider our current situation to be totally secure. Furthermore, as you pointed out, our business is always exposed to great competition from a broader entertainment perspective. Not only video games, but also various forms of leisure are competitors in this industry. In this environment, there's an increasing need, more than ever before, to continue offering unique propositions to become a brand that consumers choose. He also stated that there is a high level of importance in terms of making consoles and having exclusive hardware, and that's their core business. So he believes in exclusives, he believes in their own hardware, and he knows that, hey, we've had problems before. We're taking this long. He also stated that we're taking this long to reveal this next thing or to get into it because we want to make sure that we do it right. Shuntaro Furukawa is not a eye in the sky type of, oh, we have all these type of things and possibilities and wacky type of believer or dreamer when it comes to it. He is a hard-nosed businessman that's going to look at the X's and O's, the numbers and the facts, and go based off of that. They've got this idea that was kind of like, oh my gosh, look at this crazy or different thing where we're going to be merging our handheld and our home console with the R&D, and there's going to be a little bit of wackiness with it with the Joy-Cons and the HD Rumble and different stuff. Nothing too crazy, but a little bit of that. Shout outs to the late great Satoru Iwata for that. But now they're taking that idea, they're going to refine it, they're going to hone it down, and now at this point you have to kind of pick something, and any battles that you want to do outside of the scope of that system, it's going to be like an add-on, like a Labo or something like that, right? It's not going to be integrated into the core design of the system because you don't want to lose that set consumer base. So I personally feel that with this, they're taking it very seriously. He wants to make sure that this next transition is going to be well done. And I think that, like he said with exclusives, like he said about making hardware that's fit for that, that's their core business and that's very important to them. And overall, it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they cook up for this next Nintendo system. So that's going to be fun. But another thing that's going to be fun, or maybe not so fun for Octopath fans, is that the Katawada Corporation has acquired the Octopath Traveler developer Acquire. So Acquire got acquired, it seems that way. Yeah, it seems that way. So this is what the Katawada Corporation announced when it comes down to it, and they acquired them from Gung Ho. Acquire, they are all over the place. Square Enix, Gung Ho, Kadokawa. So, quote, to strengthen the ability to create IP in games as part of our game business strategy, we have made Acquire Corp into a wholly owned subsidiary, said Kadokawa Corporation in its latest earnings report. By acquiring the company, which has produced million-seller hit titles, we expect to generate synergies with our existing game-related subsidiaries, strengthen our planning and development capabilities group-wide, and enhance our lineup of console games. Now, Acquire, for those who don't know, was founded back in 1994 and developed the Octopath Traveler series for Square Enix, as well as Tenchu and Way of the Samurai series, which are owned by Kadokawa Group subsidiaries From Software and Spike Chunsoft. So things are kind of really complicated here with all of this. So I still feel that even though they were acquired by Kadokawa, they can still make Octopath Traveler through business arrangements and agreements, because obviously they've worked on certain things that are owned by other people, like From Software or Tenchu or Way of the Samurai, or whatever the case is, right? So I still think that Octopath Traveler can be a thing with Square Enix and with Kadokawa and everything, but they are a very talented developer. They have made million-selling titles. If you look at Octopath Traveler 1, Octopath Traveler 2, both of those are multi-million sellers. Well, Octopath Traveler 1 definitely is. Octopath Traveler 2, the last one we know about that, it's a million-seller plus. So yeah, I can understand why they got acquired. Now, they didn't say the price or how much it was. I'm guessing it wasn't some type of, oh my gosh, break the bank type of acquisition, but I think Kadokawa is going to do a great job with them, and I feel that it's going to be interesting to see how much funding and what they get for a game that they can make, what systems, platforms, and what they do going forward. Obviously, everybody is in need of great talent, especially with the Nintendo Switch 2 coming out and the PS5 continuing to roll along here. So I think that it's going to be fun to see what they can cook up and what Square Enix does with Kadokawa, if Octopath Traveler, what's the next deal with that and what they're doing. So this is going to be a lot of fun in my opinion. Everyone's stocking up on phenomenal talent overall. Now, we do have one more topic here for a pretty cool looking RPG, and it's called Lost Helden. It's been announced for consoles and PC. So developer Artisan Studio has announced the hand-painted JRPG Lost Helden for the PS5, Xbox Series S and X, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and PC via Steam, Epic Game Store, and GOG. It's launching next year in 2025. You guys are checking out this awesome trailer here. It does look really good as well. So Lost Helden is a unique hand-painted JRPG from Artisan Studios, enhanced by dynamic lighting and weather effects. Take control of 8 unique, highly customizable characters through an epic, mature story where the 7 deadly sins guide your fate. Witness a new deep 2D technology allowing you to play in 3D in hand-painted artworks with dynamic lighting and weather, introducing a battle system mixing action and strategy to allow you to play the way that you like, action and strategy. This game looks super cool, and there's a whole story that you guys can check out and the characters. But what I wanted to talk about this because this is made from some of the veterans in the RPG space. These guys have done some great work before. Final Fantasy and other games, they kind of left different studios to put together this one, and this one looks really good. I like what I'm seeing overall from Lost Helden, and I think that this cool dynamic weather and this cool action and strategy mix of combat, we're starting to see that more with various different games. The other game that comes to mind is Metaphor Refantazio, combining turn-based and action RPG. So I love these hybrids. I think that they're cool. I think the art style here is very nice with a few different quirks that I'm not too fond of, but overall, it's a game that I'm definitely going to check out and see if it's something that's really good. So we'll see overall, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far from this JRPG, coming to pretty much everything, and hopefully backwards compatibility, obviously with Nintendo Switch 2 or whatever the case is there. But yeah, I think it's going to be pretty good overall. So what are your thoughts on all the different Nintendo Switch and JRPG news and a bit more? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, check out my other Nintendo Switch RPG news right here on screen, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.